Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way, Yorkville. Happy Monday evening. I hope you guys had a great, awesome, relaxing, rejuvenating weekend. I am back here Monday evening live. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I know we have a lot of people that are watching. We're broadcasting live right now onto Facebook, both on Dr. Nathan Thompson and also Exemplify Health Center, the Wellness Way, Yorkville, on YouTube as well, and also on Rumble, and also on the wonderful people on Instagram. So, hi, Instagram. However, I am broadcasting on my phone as well. So, if you guys are joining me, please make sure you say hello. Also, let me know where you are watching from. I want to make sure that my sound is working. So, if you can hear me, just let me know as well. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about reflux medications and how they can devastate your body. Something interesting is that someone will send me this, and I'm like, well, I've kind of already talked about it, but it's kind of like a great sermon from a pastor. Many times they have to do it 25 or 30 times before anybody will listen. So I'm going to be talking about reflux medications, how they work, why there's so many side effects with this. And the research just keeps pouring in more and more about how this can cause so many issues as well. I'm going to talk about that, especially how reflux medication, I'm going to give you a physiological understanding of how this can cause issues inside the body. I'm even going to go over some testing too to show you how it actually can. Okay. So, who is this live for? Okay. Who's this live for? Well, who are the people that should be really paying attention? Anyone who's suffering with acid reflux, please make sure you watch this all the way through, or please watch the replay of it on YouTube, Rumble, on Facebook, so that you can see the slides. This is for anyone who's on any kind of PPI. And what I mean by PPI is a proton pump inhibitor, which is a type of medication. What are they called? Prilosec, Nexium, Prevacid, Protonix. These are all types of PPIs. Or maybe if you don't have any of those things, maybe some of you just may want to understand physiology and understand your health better and understand this. So if you ever come down to the fact that, hey, I have reflux, you're going to know that, hey, there's a better way than dumping PPIs into your system as well. So, which leads me into this. Coming up is our next inflammation talk, which is going to be tomorrow night at 6:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you suffer with reflux and you're from the Chicagoland area, please make sure you go to the top of this page, either on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. You'll be able to see the links attached there. Go on to Linktree, and you'll be able to register for the next inflammation event to help you understand how we take care of people. So whether it's digestive issues or weight loss resistance, infertility, thyroid disease, chronic pain, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, hormone issues, all of these pertain to inflammation first and foremost. I just got out of going over a lab review with an individual who had been on testosterone replacement therapy, and it made him feel absolutely awful. And he decided, I don't want to feel awful. I want to go off of this. We tested his testosterone. I mean, he was at 50 when men should be at his age should be at 5, 6, 700. It was just incredibly low, but it was low because he was so sick. So get registered for that next inflammation event tomorrow. The next one that we're going to be doing in person is tomorrow, June 4th at 6:00 p.m. This is an in-person event. If you're from the Chicagoland area, please go to the top. You will be able to see this, and you click on our link tree, and then there's the link right there that you can register for the inflammation event. So guys, I would love to see you there. I know that we have a lot of people registered for that, but I would love to see you there too and help improve your health journey as well. So let's talk about PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, acid reflux, and why they cause so many problems inside the body. And in fact, these are some of the articles that I pulled up, just did a screenshot just by doing a simple Google search. And this was some of the first things that came up. And I've talked about this in the past. So just so you know, I've talked about this probably maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it's been known that this has been causing some issues for a long period of time. They keep coming back and they just keep talking about it, again, just because people forget. Long-term use of acid reflux drugs linked to dementia risk. Here's what they said. This comes from August 10, 2023, not even a year ago. Prolonged use of acid reflux medication called proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs, could increase the risk of dementia, a new study shows. The latest research was published Wednesday in the Journal of Neurology. Now, I love research, especially when it actually I can explain it from a physiological standpoint. There's a lot of bad research out there. I'm like, I can't even explain why this would happen, and this is absolutely just terrible. But in this, you can actually make a physiological reason as far as why this would happen. The key, and here's what they say, the key was the amount of time that a person took one of these medications. The risk showed up after people used these drugs for more than 4 years. People who use proton pump inhibitors for that duration or longer had a 33% greater risk of developing dementia. Okay. Here's another article that says new study finds certain acid reflux medication could increase your dementia risk. So we're talking about specifically long-term use, long-term use, long-term use, which, guys, it's so common with any medication. If you don't get to the causes as far as why it's happening, just dump in a medication for a long period of time, there's going to be a lot of effects that are taking place. Now, I love when people say this, Dr. Nate, you're just against medicine. And I'm like, that would be like me being against the fire department. And let me explain that just a little bit. If your house was on fire, then what you need the most is you need the fire department. And I have no problems with people calling the fire department in order to put their fire out of their house in order to save their house. I'm not against medicine. In fact, some people come in and they're on so many different medications. They're like, oh, I know that you're against it. I'm like, if you need a fire put out, then by all means, use that in order to put the fire out. But here's what you need to do. You need to figure out why you had the fire in the first place. You need to figure out why you had the fire. Just remember this, when the fire department comes, they use a hose and an axe, they're going to sprinkle water all over your house. That water is not good for your drywall. It's not good for your carpeting. It's not good for your house. It's not good for it, but you will stand outside that house and be forever grateful that they're putting the fire out, because the thing that you want the most is to save that house. And this is what we're so good when it comes to medicine, is they're so good at putting out fires. And the problem with that is this: we're so good at putting out fires and helping people live longer that now we lead the world in the amount of time that people spend chronically sick. So if you keep sprinkling your house with fire, pretty soon that house becomes inhospitable. It's crawling with mold. It's environmentally very sick. And in fact, if you are using that, especially for long term, you better figure out why it's happening. Because if you never do, and you never hire someone in order to rebuild that house, then you just live in a sick house, and you may live longer, but you're going to spend it being longer sicker. We lead the world in the amount of years that we spend being chronically ill. So I'm not against that, but you better figure out why on earth this is happening, because so many people use medications, but they never hire someone to figure out why it happened and to improve their lifestyle so that they don't need to be on those medications for the rest of their life. So what are some of the side effects of PPIs or proton pump inhibitors? You don't have to look very far to know there's a lot of, and I put in quotations, side effects. And the reason why people call it side effects, I'm like, it's not a side effect. It's an effect. They call it a side effect because those are the things they don't want to happen. So they say, well, it's a side effect. I'm like, nope. If you understand physiology and how the Swiss watch works inside the body, then you're going to understand that this is no more than just an effect of long-term use. So what are some of the effects of being on a PPI proton pump inhibitor? Number one, it increases your fracture risk. Well, why is that? Because PPIs actually lower stomach acid. And when you start lowering stomach acid, you're going to lower the absorption of certain things inside of your body, which is going to be things like calcium, magnesium, iron, things that are going to be needed from your bones. You could become anemic from being chronically low in stomach acid. So it can increase your risk for fracture. A lot of times women tell me, they're like, what do I need to do for osteoporosis? And if they have very poor stomach acid function, or they're on some kind of PPI, I'm like, the biggest thing is figure out why you're on a PPI and then start working on correcting that. It can increase your risk for pneumonia. And one of the reasons why is if you understand the role of stomach acid, if you decrease stomach acid, you can carry a lot of extra infection. And if you tend to aspirate that into the lungs, it can cause an infection within the lungs. Just go ahead, guys, and look this up. It can cause irritable bowel, or you can carry infection. The most common infection is C. diff, Clostridium difficile. And this, people think, well, where did I catch this at? And in fact, when we do a stool test, people think they caught it from somewhere. I'm like, no, the purpose of stomach acid is to actually sterilize your food. And that's why you can get a lot of things from hand to mouth because you're not sterilizing your food the way that you're supposed to. If you look at the purpose of stomach acid is to break down your proteins. If you want to have a leaky gut, you want to have irritable bowel syndrome and things like that, the first thing is you need to have a high stress situation in which you don't have enough stomach acid, because the purpose of stomach acid not only is to sterilize food, but it's also to break your proteins down into amino acids. The immune system responds to proteins, but it will not respond to amino acids. That's one of the biggest things. Look at what the immune system responds to. It responds to foreign proteins. That can be a bacteria, that can be a virus, that can be a toxin. That also can become a food as well. Here's what the research article has proven is that it can increase your risk for dementia, especially if you're taking it long term. Well, why on earth would that happen? Well, just look at how proton pump inhibitors work. They work by inhibiting the production of certain neurotransmitters inside the body. The neurotransmitter is known as acetylcholine. That neurotransmitter is very important for good autonomic nerve function. And that's why you see this nerve coming down. It's called the vagus nerve, and it transmits its nerve signal. Its main neurotransmitter is known as acetylcholine. So if you decrease the amount of acetylcholine being produced, not only do you decrease the production of it within the stomach, but with all drugs, you decrease it everywhere, which is why this is very important when it comes to your brain and with memory and things like that. And it can even cause problems with cardiac arrhythmias, okay? And the reason why is because low stomach acid can interfere with the absorption of certain vitamins, certain minerals like magnesium, and certain B vitamins and things like that. So it can become, over time, you can start to develop a lot of deficiencies within the autonomic nerve system that's responsible for proper firing of certain nerves inside of the body. So, and these are all well documented. Okay. Now, it's not, let me make sure we know this. It's not too much stomach acid, guys. It's not too much stomach acid. The reason why I say this is if you were sitting outside of Walmart or Target and you said, do you have acid reflux? And you have 30% of people say, yes, I have terrible acid reflux. And ask them, why do I have acid reflux? And they're like, well, because I make too much stomach acid. And here's one of the things with acid reflux is that it's never too much stomach acid. Okay. It's not too much stomach acid. And the reason why is stomach acid is a product of your autonomic nerve system being in rest and digest. And the last time that I checked, most people don't suffer with being too relaxed and too much into rest and digest. They're in fight or flight, which means that their autonomic nerve system, certain parts are activated and some are going to be inhibited. So what's responsible for rest and digest? It's called the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve comes out from the brainstem and it comes down, goes right next to the neck, which is why having good upper cervical health, when you're talking from a chiropractic perspective, is very important. Because have I had people go off of PPIs just by actually correcting their spine and the nerve system? Yes, but it's not everyone, because a lot of things are multifactorial. So everyone thinks it's too much stomach acid, but in reality, it's too little stomach acid. Okay. Now watch. I want you to think of this. So the nerve impulse is transmitted down to the vagus nerve, which is then responsible for getting you into rest and digest, which is then responsible for the secretion, carrying a nerve impulse for the secretion of stomach acid. Okay. And so this is why one of the things PPIs do is they're blocking or they're inhibiting the production of the neurotransmitter. That neurotransmitter is called acetylcholine. And this is important for the production of stomach acid. But here's the other thing. There also is critical for the brain for memory, arousal, and thought. Okay. So inhibit the production of that for a long period of time, and you're going to run into some problems big time. Now, let me talk about stomach acid for just a minute, because here's the thing of how the stomach works. If you look at stomach acid, what's the purpose? The purpose of stomach acid is to first and foremost sterilize your food, which is why if you don't have too little stomach acid, you don't sterilize your food very well, and you can carry a lot of infection that's going on. The second reason is to break down your proteins, to start cleaving them down from proteins into amino acids, which is why when people are carrying a lot of stress, kind of chronically low stomach acid and things like that, they can develop a lot of problems in the gastrointestinal system with bloating, leaky gut, and things like that. And so But think of this: food comes down and it goes down into the esophagus. The esophagus, the sphincter opens up, allows food to be able to go through, and then it starts getting mixed. And so you're going to get it broken down, and it's getting mixed with stomach acid, and then the stomach will then contract in order to push it through what's known as the pyloric sphincter, which is this area right here. You guys ever heard of H. pylori? H. pylori actually is normal bacteria that hangs around right there. Now, one of the interesting things is this, is that as it goes through this pyloric sphincter, it says, has it been sterilized, and is it getting broken down enough? And if it hasn't, then what happens is it will then send it back up into the stomach. And usually this sphincter is going to stay open. And so you can get a lot of acid that gets regurgitated up into the esophagus that can cause a lot of burning and things like that. So immediately people are like, oh, it's too much stomach acid. And I'm like, no, it's not enough. And it keeps mixing it around for a long period of time. So this is why, guys, stomach acid is so incredibly important, but there's not a lot of people that actually think about it. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. And let's go to the Cleveland Clinic. Let's see what the Cleveland Clinic actually says. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that plays a role in memory, learning, attention, arousal, and involuntary muscle movement. Okay. Medical conditions associated with low acetylcholine include Alzheimer's disease and also myasthenia gravis. Okay. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical that carries its messages from your brain to your body through nerve cells. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter. This means it excites the nerve cell and causes it to fire off a message, like from the vagus nerve into the stomach. Acetylcholine is involved in many important functions in your body. It plays a major role in voluntary muscle movement all over your body. This is muscle movement you control. Nerve cells stimulate muscle nerve cells, causing muscles to contract. It also plays an important role in brain nerve cells in such processes as memory, thinking, and learning. This is how the whole entire body starts to work together. Now, from the Cleveland Clinic, where is acetylcholine found? Acetylcholine is found in your central nerve system, your brain and spinal cord, as well as your peripheral nerve system. Acetylcholine also plays a significant role in your autonomic nerve system, which is your vagus nerve, for example, a branch of your peripheral nerve system. Your autonomic nerve system regulates many of the autonomic functions in your body, such as properly functioning of your internal organs. What are some medical conditions associated with low levels of acetylcholine? And here's what they say: Alzheimer's disease, myasthenia gravis. Have you ever heard of that? And Alzheimer's disease. They just say that right there. Now, guys, here's what's really important when you talk about your autonomic nerve system is that these are things that you don't have to think about. It's happening automatically. But acetylcholine is specifically important when you are talking about your vagus nerve and you're talking about being into rest and digest, which means anything that we can do to help you get into rest and digest is going to benefit you. Because the last time I checked, no one's running around in too much rest and digest. Like, you literally didn't take too long of a nap and then develop reflux. You didn't develop reflux by sleeping too much. But a lot of people are massively stressed out. Their sympathetic nerve system is firing off. And if you understand what happens in the sympathetic nerve system when you're carrying a lot of stress, this is why digestion will just start to go to pot as a result of that. Okay. So when people have acid reflux, really the condition that they have is known as hypochlorhydria, or low stomach acid. What is this going to affect? Okay. This is going to affect absorption of things like calcium, iron, B12. It's going to affect protein breakdown from proteins into amino acid. You're not going to sterilize your food very well. And here's what's also interesting is that when you get low in stomach acid, it affects the movement of food from the stomach, out of the stomach, and through the gastrointestinal issues. This is why, guys, I've talked about GLP-1 agonists, and I've talked about this in the past. You can go back a couple of weeks, and I had to rehash that again because people kept asking me about it. But basically, GLP-1 agonists, they cause a problem known as gastroparesis, which means poor motility of the stomach. So food stays in the stomach for a longer period of time. And look at one of the side effects, or I should just say effects, and it's actually gallstones, or it's causing people to get their gallbladder out. And one of the reasons why is what causes the gallbladder to contract when you have proper movement of food. And if food doesn't exit the stomach, it causes the bile to just stay there within the gallbladder. And then what happens is that if that gallbladder isn't constantly moving, it just will precipitate into stones as well. So this is why even for healthy gallbladder function, you need a healthy amount of stomach acid in order to move food out of the stomach. Now, here's what I want to show you is I want to show you a functional stool test of someone that we took, and this individual was on a PPI for 19 years. Oh boy. So for 19 years, she was on a proton pump inhibitor, and she came in, she's like, I got to get off of this. I've been on this for way too long. So if you look at her stool test, here's one of the clues that you see is number one, a lot of fecal fat in her stool. Okay. This can signify a lot of things. It can signify a gallbladder that's not firing the way that it's supposed to. It can signify a lot of inflammation around the gastrointestinal barrier. And this is why when you look at this, you're like, oh boy, things aren't working very good. But here's what's so interesting, being on a PPI for a long period of time, is she's got a lot of protein, undigested protein in her stool. Not only that, you can see her gastrointestinal barrier is extremely inflamed, not only with secretory IgA, but also known as eosinophilic protein X, which also is very common with people on acid reflux medication. And then you can see that her whole entire microbiome, because the environment was just so poor, it was basically just killed off. So you can see she was very deficient in certain bacteria. And let me just say this, because sometimes people are like, when I go over their stool tests, they're like, well, why aren't you putting in probiotics? And I'm like, later, because it's kind of like this. I wouldn't go to Menards and say, give me your best grass seed. I want your best grass seed because there's things that aren't growing within my yard. And then I go get the best grass seed from Menards or Home Depot or wherever you like to go. It doesn't matter. But it's the best grass seed. And I decide to spread it all over my driveway. Doesn't matter how good it is. The environment is not ripe for it to grow because there's no soil, there's no water, there's nothing. That's why you need to plant it in a good, healthy environment. That's why I always say, hey, probiotics or fermented foods, things like that should come later once the environment starts to change. But you can see too that she's carrying a lot of pathogenic bacteria, potential pathogens. And you can also see, because her microbiome is so low, her short chain fatty acid production was absolutely in the tank. What are short chain fatty acids? This is what your microbiome makes with the presence of food for it. This is why prebiotic fiber is so important. But you could throw a lot of prebiotic fiber in there, but if you have a terrible microbiome, it doesn't need the food if the microbiome is just not there in order to be able to convert it into short chain fatty acids. And then you can see that she's got a high amount of pathogenic bacteria. And I think if looking back on it, she was carrying 3 different infections that was going on. And now you understand, being chronically low in stomach acid, why that will interfere with the sterilization of food and why that can cause you to carry infection within the gastrointestinal system. So here's the question, guys, is, are you in too much rest and digest if stomach acid is a product of being in rest and digest, or are you in too much fight or flight? Okay. And the reason why I have a picture of a bear there is because if you live here in the United States, most people are spending most of their time in chronic stress, chronic fight or flight, and that is just death to the gastrointestinal system. It's going to cause so many issues in the gastrointestinal system. Give me an amen if you're watching right now. Because most people they're not suffering with being too relaxed. That just can't happen. They're suffering with too much stress, and they have the proverbial bear that's just following them wherever they're going, and they don't have the ability to be able to get themselves out of it so they can get good, healthy stomach acid production and good stomach acid release that's coming from the parietal cells of the stomach. Now, this is in Alzheimer's and Dementia 2020. So this is in 2020. This is not a new article. This is 4 years. This was 4 years ago. And this comes out and we're just like, yeah, this is like new or something like that. Well, they went over this 4 years ago. And here's what they said from the Alzheimer's Association out of their publication in 2020. Proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs, or acid reflux medication, act with unprecedented potencies as inhibitors of the acetylcholine biosynthesizing enzyme, a plausible missing link for their association with incidence of dementia. Here's what they say. Several pharmacoepidemiological studies indicate that proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs, significantly increase the risk for dementia. Given that accumulating evidence points at cholinergic dysfunction, sorry guys, it's late, meaning the production of acetylcholine, this calls for restrictions for prolonged use of PPIs in the elderly and in patients with dementia or ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS. Okay, isn't that interesting? Is I want you to think about it. If you're taking care of someone, like your parents, or if you're taking care of someone who's older, and you're like, wow, I'm concerned about dementia. One thing you can do in order to massively decrease your risk is have healthy digestion and don't go on a PPI. All right. So, but even they admitted that 4 years ago, yet they keep coming out with research saying this. And we have known this. I've talked about this for the last 10 or 15 years. The reason why, guys, is because if you look at the Swiss watch principle, and this is why with everything, you have to look at how every organ system affects every organ system. This is why digestion, if you start interfering or you start manipulating the digestive system, it's going to affect your nerve system. They've just proven it, that it affects your nerve system, that it affects a lot of other things. And this is why when people come to me, they're like, oh, I have hormone problems. How can I just manipulate my hormones by taking a bunch of hormones? And I'm like, well, maybe there's some a nerve system stress that's going on. Maybe there's a lot of issues with the digestive system. Maybe there's some problems with your immune system as a result, the side effects of being on some of these medications and things like that. And this is why, guys, this is why you need to look at everything affecting everything. And the problem is we're in a healthcare system today that is really nothing for this, for that. And in fact, a lot of you probably just think this for that, which is why you're like, oh, I have cramping, I just need magnesium. Oh, I have this, just take some more potassium. Oh, I have this, then I need to take some colostrum or something like that. You have to look at the whole body as looking at everything together. This is why, guys, I'll always say, did you know that your big toe controls your heart? And you know what? People will laugh. I always talk about this at the inflammation talk. I'm like, hey, raise your hand if you believe the big toe controls the heart. And they're like, nope, no, it doesn't. And I'm like, take your shoe off, take your sock off, give me a hammer. I will smash your big toe as hard as I can. Then we'll take your blood pressure and then let me know what your thoughts are, because you'll see heart rate go up, blood pressure go up. What drives down this whole entire Swiss watch? And it's this, it's stressors. And I want you to think of this. The body is always trying to adapt to stressors, and it will always adapt. But if the stressors become too much, instead of adapting into health, it adapts into a disease process. So stressors. Now, if you have a lot of stressors that are going on, here's what happens. It just keeps filling up the bucket. And then finally it just overflows. And this is when you start developing a disease process. The body can't healthily adapt to certain types of stressors. And this is why removing stressors is so important. So what's the solution for PPIs? What's the solution for, guys, a lot of things? It's find the causes. I love how people say, oh, we get to the root cause. And I'm like, you should be saying the root cause is, because there's more than one cause that's taking place. Okay. So what are the things when we say get tested? What do you need to get tested by? This is why, guys, when someone sends a message to me and they're like, what test should I get? I'm like, I don't know. This is why we x-ray a lot of people. But everything comes down to, when we talk about stressors, we comes down to mental stress, chemical stress. It comes down to physical stress. Guys, this is why I've had people, just by adjusting them, they're like, oh my gosh, my digestion's better. What kind of witchcraft are you doing here? And it's just like, we're just lowering stressors, taking stress out of the body, emptying the bucket so the body can adapt to its environment better. Chemical and mental. This is why mental stress can be absolutely devastating to a person's body because of what happens with the stress response and how it puts a person in a fight or flight, and how it can actually, over time, cause hypochlorhydria, low stomach acid, that can cause all kinds of issues as well. Now, guys, do you understand the effects? Now, can you understand why there's an increase in fracture risk? Low stomach acid causes decreased absorption of a lot of minerals, including calcium. Does it make sense why it can cause pneumonia? Does it make sense why it can cause irritable bowel and why you can carry infection within the gastrointestinal system? Does it make sense how it can interfere with the absorption of certain minerals? Yes, like magnesium and things like that, that can eventually cause cardiac arrhythmias. And yes, how it blocks acetylcholine, especially long term. Does it make sense on how, in effect, it can actually lead to dementia and things like that? You have to look at it like a Swiss watch because everything affects everything else. So, guys, if you are from the Chicagoland area and you're like, where do I need to start? Here's where I want you to start. Go to our Linktree page and get registered for our next inflammation event. That's going to be tomorrow, June 4th at 6:00 p.m. Guys, we are usually running it every 3 weeks right now just because of the demand. And but get to the next one because I don't want you to suffer any more than you have to, especially. So if you go to our Linktree and you follow that, if you can see the slides, you'll be able to see right there. This is where you register for the in-person inflammation event. No, I'm not working remotely right now. And then also, if you are outside the Chicagoland area and you're like, wow, what do I need to do in order to get involved? And what do I need to do in order to start working with someone who's going to know these things? Guys, if you go to Linktree, you also will see I have a link on there to find a Wellness Way doctor. So find a Wellness Way doctor that's near you. You can type in your zip code if you go to the website, and you can find someone who's close to you that you can see either in person or they might be able to work with you remotely and be able to drop ship some of the testing and things like that. But the biggest thing is I tell people, don't try to do it on your own. Get some good testing that's going on, and hire someone who knows how to get you to point A to point B as quickly as possible versus taking all of these detours. That's where you can find a Wellness Way doctor. And for the in-person inflammation event that we have coming up for Chicagoland area people, you can see that you just click on that link and you can register within literally a minute or 2 minutes. Okay. So this is how, guys, reflux medications can potentially devastate your body, especially if you've been on it long term. You have to get to the causes. You have to be able to remove stressors. And then, yes, there are some things that you're going to have to change when it comes to your lifestyle. Every single person that comes in, we tell them to do things when it comes to their lifestyle. We just don't dump a bunch of supplements into their system. We teach them how to change their lifestyle and how to get them out of fight or flight, chronic fight or flight. We're one of the best when it comes to doing that. But we're also one of the best at looking at the Swiss watch principle, putting all of that together and not just saying, hey, we're just going to dump a bunch of supplements and just like walk away. And the reason why is this: I don't want you on a bunch of supplements for the rest of your life. I don't want you. What I want you to do is to get better as quickly as possible so that you don't need us long term, and that we're working on prevention and we're not working on you just dumping a bunch of stuff the rest of your life and trying to manipulate a stool test or something like that. We want you to be restored. That's one of the biggest things. Do you want manipulation or do you want restoration? There's a big difference between the two. A lot of these medications are just manipulating the body. We don't want to manipulate. We want to restore. There's a big difference between the two. This is how this happens. Go back and watch it again. But please make sure, guys, that you share this video. And if you're on Instagram, I'll go ahead and I'll post this to our profile. But make sure that you share this video with other people, because I know this has the potential to impact a lot of people moving forward, especially. So make sure that you share this video. Keep watching for awesome updates that we have that's coming on. And guys, please, again, like I said, please share this video. And then also, I'll be back here next Monday, Lord willing, and to go over another awesome live topic. Just give me a topic if you have any suggestions as well. Maybe a Q&A, just because I know I'm going to be really busy this weekend. But guys, be well, be blessed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure that you share this video. I love and appreciate all of you. Be well, and we will see you very soon. As I always say, remember who you are.